Homelessness 2.0, day 11. It's now almost 2 p.m. and I've been up since almost 10 a.m. Up at about 9:40, I want to say. And I've got nothing done because that's me. That's me being overwhelmed and feeling like everything that I do is pointless, useless, and hopeless. That's me. It's my life. That's how I live day in and day out. I occasionally have a small bout of yay. I don't even know what to call that. But otherwise, nope. It's just one thing after another of feeling overwhelmed despite really having nothing done. It's funny. Recently listened to one of the Scrubs podcasts. I don't think it's the most recent one. I think it's the one prior to. But they mentioned about, you give something to someone who's busy. So whenever there's a project that you need getting done, you give it to somebody who's busy. And the reason why is because that person will be able to make time for it because they're already planning like what they're trying to accomplish. They've already got other stuff they're going to do and they're going to figure out where to put it in their schedule. And I'm not busy at all. I have nothing. I have things I need done, but I don't have things that are being done. And I'll say I'm one of those people who, when I'm more busy, I tend to get more things done and I tend to plan things better. But it's hard to do that. It's hard for me to plan from nothing. And it's hard for me to plan and be successful at anything when so many other factors that are just looming over my head are oppressive and it just weigh me down. And so I become paralyzed from inaction and from making the wrong choices here or there, whatever. And sometimes just completely forget. Even if I'm taking my meds, I'll just completely forget that I had a thing I needed to do on this day at this time or whatever. And although I have plenty of hours in the day, I have the same number of hours in the day, sort of. We all have 24 hours, but we don't all have the same opportunities due to certain limitations. When you're using when you're using slow transit all the time, you don't have the same 24 hours. They are not equitable in that sense. They are if you ignore everything else and you just say, well, we all have 24 hours in the day. But we don't all have the same ability to get the same things done in the same period of time. And yet again, this daylight savings thing has thrown me for a loop. Again, one might say, well, why not? Why wouldn't you be waking up earlier? We pushed our clocks, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. My body does not care about logic. It doesn't make sense of these things. I'm literally going to bed later now, and I'm waking up later now. Now, part of it is because, I'm spending a little bit of my time just kind of screwing around at night. And now that night happens to be longer, because instead of allowing things to change gradually, we say, nope, flip it all. And so that's why it feels like a night is so much earlier, because we don't allow it. Like, if we stayed here right now and we never changed our clocks ever again, everybody would be okay with the amount of daylight we have at the end of the day for the rest of our lives. Now, of course, people who are further away from the equator, it's a little different. But if you really need that much extra light at the end of the day, just move closer to the equator. Stop fucking everybody else up over for it. You have that option, and we don't need to screw with everybody's circadian rhythms, and not just ours, but also animals. Like, we're not the only ones in this. We're all being affected by this. More people die when clocks flip than they should, if you want to call that metric being a should, whatever. There's increased risk of heart attack and, of course, car accidents following the clock changes. Happens every damn year. We need to stop doing that. But then we're also affecting animals with the way our behavior is, because the way we do anyway. There's so many other problems with it. And I'm going to continue to bitch about it for the rest of my life until we stop fucking doing it. Daylight savings is stupid. And if you like it, stop. I don't care what you like. It's literally one of the stupidest things we've ever done. And you can also thank the Nazis for it, too. So, you know. And I'm not even being facetious. It's literally one of, like, the reason we do it is very much the reason they did it. It had to do with the Nazis, it had to do with World War II. It's not farmers and all that other bullshit. It's not saving candles. We don't save energy when we do it. Most of the BS reasons that people give, the only reason, the one reason that people give that even has any remote legitimacy, and it's minor, but it's the only one that has any real truth, is the fact that people just like having daylight at the end of the day. That's it. That's the only reason. That's it. Golfers are a big factor. It's like, oh, I can play more rounds of golf until the sun goes down, blah, 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 whatever. It's all crap like that. It's just personal. There's nothing fact-based that says daylight savings is a good thing, because it's not. It's only personal. And if you want that much life, if you want that much light, rather, at the end of your day, just move closer to the equator and stop screwing with everybody else. End of rant. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself today. I got a response back, like I said, I know what I have to do. I've got to, schedule an appointment to go to the DMV so I can take a test, the written test, so that I can get the driver's permit to then get the services from the school that wants me to spend potentially $1,000 on refreshing my driving ability. I'm wondering if I can just start off with 2 hours and then figure out from there, instead of, because I don't want to commit to $600 if I don't have to commit to $600. Like, it's not that I haven't been using the roads in California, it's that I just haven't been driving. Like, I've been using, I haven't been using the roads much, of course, now, because I don't have a bike, but when I was using a bike on a regular basis, I would say that I was a pretty good rider, understanding the rules. I mean, one of the biggest problems that people seem to have is understanding the right of way. In America, with our little drive on the right side thing and everything, we go to the right. If you're looking at it from above, it's counterclockwise. But if you and I both stop at the same time, if you're on the right-hand side, you go first. If there's a bicyclist, go. Take your right of way. Do not be nice, because you're just causing more problems. First of all, and every time that I had this problem, and I rode my bike for like 3+ years, from 2014 to 2017 until my bike got stolen. And I know 2014 is because that was when I got my first housing after my first real bout with homelessness. I would stop at the intersection, and people who would have the right of way would not go when they were supposed to. And it's like, stop this behavior. You're not doing anyone any favors, and in fact, you are making it unsafe. Because I'm stuck. Like, a bicyclist needs to be in motion as often as possible. When people bitch and complain about bicyclists not stopping at stop signs and stoplights and stuff, you need to understand something. Now, first of all, here is a big caveat to all of that. the vast majority of the time, you should consider stopping if you are on a bicycle. But that doesn't necessarily mean you absolutely 100% need to stop every single time. And I know this sounds controversial. And I know this sounds like some sort of bicycle entitlement. It's not. There's an actual real reason for this. Cars can go at the push of a button. Bicycles cannot. That's why. So, now you may see me say that and say, well, what about? Let me cover the whatabouts. When you approach a stop sign or a street light, it's easy to determine if there's any traffic. Like, you know that there's traffic. It's not hard to determine if there's cars that are traversing in a perpendicular path in cross streets. When approaching a major intersection, when there's multiple lanes to cross, stop. Unless you're turning right. Even then, it's still probably a good idea to stop when you're on your bicycle. If you're in a car, stop anyway. Period. End of story. When you're on a bicycle, though, momentum is how you were able to maintain not only your ability to continue moving, but also part of your safety. Because if you are stopped, remember, bicycles are small compared to cars. Bicycles are harder to see. One of the many problems I had when riding my bicycle, and I barely rode on major roads. I always took side roads because I didn't really have anywhere else to go. But even on side roads, people have a hard time seeing you. And even if they do, it's almost like they don't give a shit about your life. Because you don't have protective equipment. You don't have a protective box of death surrounding you like a car. You have a foam hat. That's about it. Maybe you have knee pads, shoulder pads, whatever, but those things are going to stop your bones from breaking. You don't have a cage around you, which is one of the reasons why bicyclers often, in a derogatory way, will call people driving cars cagers. And if you're sitting still, you're harder to see, but it's also harder for you to get up to speed. So if you have to keep doing that over and over and over and over again, not only are you slowing down your whole entire process on a slower moving vehicle as it is, you are also repeatedly putting yourself in greater danger. Because we as Americans care more about our cars than we do any other form of transportation. And as such, cars get all of the benefits. I used to ride on a street from my house to the school. It was pretty much just a one-way shot. At a certain point on that street, there was a bike lane. This bike lane was an afterthought. It wasn't originally there. All they did was paint over a part of the street. What was next to that part, that bike lane? Parked cars. Tons and tons of parked cars. And almost all of them covered the line. So I didn't use the bike lane. You might be pissed that someone's not using the bike lane. Look at what the bike lane is. Look at where it's at. Look at how it's associated and how it's reflective of the nature of the road. The bike lane isn't always safe. Most of the time, it's actually worse. It is, in fact, a safety hazard, not safety. Because now people are like, oh, well, you're supposed to ride in the bike lane, so I'm just going to fly past you. Which, again, you don't care about the bicyclist. The bicyclist isn't in your way. You are causing greater potential harm. This is not entitlement on the behavior of being a bicyclist. It was so bittersweet that my bike was stolen, by the way. Like, one might say, oh my God, why would you even think it's a good thing that your bike got stolen? Because then I didn't have to worry about getting potentially run over every time I was going somewhere. That's it. Because I was in some of the best shape of my life when riding that bike, partly because I was almost always having a fucking heart attack. Stop trying to kill bicyclists. Stop being assholes. Stop thinking that they're in your way. Because you know what? They wouldn't be if we as a society cared more about alternative forms of transportation than cars. If cars were number 4 on the list instead of number 1, whereas we had bikes and trains and buses and then cars, if we had something like that, and why did I say it in that order? Because those are the least polluting options. How funny is that? Bikes, no pollution. Now you might say, oh, well, this person has to eat more food and potentially they're going to eat more meat or whatever. We're talking about direct. Bicyclists don't put out carcinogens. They breathe out carbon dioxide and water vapor. Now, one of the other problems is that we, as Americans, due to a massive, real conspiracy in the early 1900s to dismantle public transportation, with GM and Goodyear actually conspiring with each other and creating propagandized content to push the idea of American freedom through the use of their products. We fell for it. We call people jaywalkers, even though jay at the time was a huge slur. We put so much responsibility on everybody but the car drivers. We have such crappy public transit that we can't just switch over to it because what we have in cars cannot be done with our public transit. We don't have real safety for bicyclists. We don't have good quality, high reliability, expeditious public transit via trains and buses. When you have to wait an hour for a bus, of course I'm going to get a car. If the difference between driving somewhere and doing all the crap that driving does and causes, including traffic and congestion and pollution and all that, if that's better than waiting for an hour for your bus, because that's the difference between your buses, of course we're going to drive cars. When there's no sense of privacy anywhere, well, if those things were faster, the sense of privacy wouldn't be as much of an issue, because then we could get to where we're going without having to worry about it. If I could go to a train station and know when the train is going to be there, that would be great. But I don't have that. Same thing with buses. If I knew that if I got on a bus at a certain time and I would arrive at my destination at a certain time all the time, I would do it more often. But I don't. I can't. Because we don't have a system set up for that. We might someday. And unfortunately, despite my reservations and total willful actions to avoid driving a car for the last 10 years, and because things have not changed significantly enough, and because of the nature of my own problems, I have to then become part of the problem. Which is probably one of the reasons why I'm balking at this so much and holding back and trying not to do it. But I know that I have to. So I have to become part of the problem, which is why it's taking me so long. And why I don't want to do it, but I probably need to. Have fun.